Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm really excited to show off my blue-purple crocodile list that I've been working on. I really like the playstyle of this deck, mainly revolving around removing your opponent's threats and outgrinding them into the late game. I've really been enjoying the game, and I like that as we get new sets and the card pool increases, we can start looking at these old leaders that never saw play on a competitive level and start to develop strategies and decks for them. And with that, let's start the deck profile. So first, let's go over the Activate main events. The reason that I'm differentiating the Activate main with the counters is because for the deck to perform to the best of its abilities, you want to find a good balance of Activate main and counters. This allows you to use your leader's effect on your turn and on your opponent's turn, which means that you just get free value, basically. Also, when it comes to 3000 Worlds and Red Rock, those are our removal cards, so you have to max out the copies when it comes to these. This is what allows us to stay in the game, and this is the main reason we even want to play this deck, because we have so many removal cards. Also, I'm going to show a little later, but we also play Missile Sunday, which can help us retrieve our events from the discard pile. Finally, we play 2 Sanji's Peel Off. This card just helps us get back our advantage. We play Sanji's Peel Off for 3, and with our leader effect, we're able to draw 3 cards, so we can get a full hand back. And in addition, sometimes a trigger will come up because we do heal in this deck. Being able to play something like the Doflamingo blocker, and then see that we have Crocodile, and then stack Sanji's Peel Off as a trigger, can also be something that comes up. But we really aren't upset with drawing Sanji's Peel Off. We do want to see it late game when we start to lose some steam, because it can just get us back into the game. Next, we have our counter events. We play 14 of them. We want to make sure that we can survive as long as possible and keep our life total healthy. So we play the 0 cost events because they typically just end up being a 3k counter for 1. And also it helps you cycle. So you can get rid of a card and rain and then draw. Also, if you are comfortable taking the life, you can just play Gum Gum Rain for 0, not counter out, and then you just get to draw a card. So while it didn't work as a counter, it's a card that can never really truly be stuck in your hand, because you can always just get rid of it and grab a new card. We play 4 Dragon Twister, this event right here, because it allows us to protect ourselves from the rush decks. Something around the lines of Zoro, this allows us just to pick apart their board, and then when it comes to Law, we can get rid of their blockers. When it comes to Law, we can't, it's very hard to be able to outgrind Law, just because they do, in a sense, have infinite resources when it comes to their loop. So the idea against Law is to just get rid of as many blockers as possible and start hitting life. It's very important because in that matchup, they typically always take the first 2 life, because they need the cards to be able to play their deck correctly. Then at that point, we're just playing against a 2 life leader. So early game, you really don't have to put too much Dawn on your leader to swing. You can swing 5 and Law will take the attack. And then finally, we have Love Love. Love Love is a great card. It protects us, and then we get to draw a card, and then for our leader effect, we get to draw another card. So we go +1. And that's it for the events. We played 24 events, so almost half of our deck is all events. Next, I want to show off our blockers. We play 8 blockers in the form of 3 Missile Sunday and 3 Doflamingo. Doflamingo is very important because early game, it can allow us to see our boss monsters as early as possible, so our 8 drops and 10 drops, but it can also stack our deck in a way where we can plan out the next few turns. So for example, if we play Doflamingo on 3 and we have 3000 Warlords somewhere in our top 5, We want that as our next card because when we draw, we would be able to put 1 Dawn on our leader, play 3,000 worlds, and then draw a card. In addition, if we stacked a 0 cost event to draw off of 3,000 worlds, then on our opponent's turn, if they swing 7, we can use the 0 cost event, discard a card, and then draw an additional card. So you can basically plan out your turns multiple steps in advance, which is something that's really strong for this deck because you are consistently drawing. Also, Doflamingo allows us to stack our top 5 for our 8-drop Croc. So we can draw 8-drop Croc and we know the next card. So we can stack a trigger on top of life. Or we can stack something we want to see very soon and then just take the next attack. So it's basically drawing a card early. In addition, we have Miss All Sunday. Miss All Sunday is one of the best cards in the whole deck. It's one of the reasons to play the deck. Since your leader is a Baroque Works, we have access to as much as 8 red rocks, more than any other deck if they aren't playing Miss All Sunday. Even something like Blue Croc, they might not max out on red rocks, and we're just able to see so many cards, and we're not punished for playing so many events because we also play the 0 cost events. So that's one of the main strong points for this deck, that we are able to play so many events and we don't get punished for them, and then we play Miss All Sunday, so we just get to see those events over and over again. Next, we have our 2Ks. We have 4 Khalifa, 4 X-Drake, and 4 Sasaki. We play 4 Khalifa because it is a card that we can play onto the board if we don't see any other characters worth playing. If it sticks on board, it can be a card that we protect because we have so many events that we can protect it as if it's our life, and it can just consistently grab us 1 additional card. Then we have 4 X-Drake. X-Drake is just a card that it's an option to play. It's a 5-drop 5K, and it gets rid of a card in your opponent's hand. So if we're severely ahead but we don't have any characters to play, this is one of those cards that we can play onto the board and continue to be ahead. And by ahead, I just mean that typically we won't have a board with this deck until we start dropping our boss monsters, but we will just have more cards than our opponent. So if we get our opponent down to maybe 3 or 4 cards and we're still at 5 or 6, we will always be at least 4 or 5. So we can just continue to snowball and make our opponent run out of cards. And X-Drake allows us to do that. And then lastly, we have 2 Sasaki. It's just one of the better 2Ks in the game when it comes to purple or blue. We could play Kaya, but we don't want to sacrifice a card. Here, we're doing the same, but at the very least, we're still sacrificing a card because he doesn't give us any value. He just gives us a new hand. But it does allow us to have a 3/4, so it can attack in later turns, unlike Kaya, which you would have to put 5 Dawn on her to attack. And then finally, we have our 8 boss monsters. So these are just our late game cards that will allow us to win the game. We have to see these cards to win the game because, as you saw, most of our deck is defensive. So there are some matchups where you might be able to win even if you don't see these cards. Something around the lines of Zoro. If you're able to protect your life very strongly, they don't play blockers, so hero swings might get you there. But realistically, you do have to see these cards. And you cycle so much through your cards and you draw so much that you definitely see these cards consistently. The reason that I picked Kaido over something like Mihawk is just because of the stat line on Kaido. We want our cards to be very well statted because there are a lot of strong 9 drops and 10 drops in this format. 8 drops, 9 drops, and 10 drops in the format. So we don't want to have a 10 drop and then it's easily outed. We want to make sure that it sticks to the board. So something like Mihawk isn't well statted, it's a 9/9. So something just like Big Mom on my opponent's turn, or if they play their own Kaido, can just out my Mihawk once it's swung into my opponent's leader. In addition, we also play Crocodile because Crocodile, we only play 8 blockers, so Crocodile is almost like 4 more blockers, but better. It heals us a life, so it just allows that relentless defensive wall where our opponent just feels like they can't get through to us and they can't decrease our life. Also, Crocodile allows us to cycle. So if our opponent attacks, we can go Dawn -1, draw 1 card, discard 1 card. Towards the end of the game, going Dawn -1 doesn't really matter. And Crocodile we will typically do on 10 Dawn just because we want to get back to 10 in case we have a Kaido. But if you have multiple Crocodiles, you don't mind going Crocodile into Crocodile. And then again, back to the Kaido. The reason that we don't play any Mihawks and we just max out on Kaidos is just because Kaido being able to bounce 2 cards can also be very strong against something like Zoro and the Rush decks. Just because being able to bounce 2 cards at the same time versus just bottom deck 1 is just very good. I would consider playing Mihawks going forward, but at the moment I really do like the 4 Kaido and I like the stat line that it gives us. So that's the deck profile. That's the current build that I have for Blue Purple Croc. But there have been a lot of cards that I have also been testing, so I wanted to show off those cards so that when you're building the deck, you have options. Because there are a lot of cards that you can put into your Blue Purple Croc, and that's one of the reasons I've really been having fun building the deck. So first, I wanted to show off the Baroque Works engine. We have Ms. Valentine being able to search any Baroque Works card, including herself, which is really nice because typically when you are adding a searcher to your deck, you want to make sure that you have enough search targets. But since Ms. Valentine can search herself, that allows us to not have to fill our deck with targets that we don't necessarily want to play. So we can play Mr. 13 and Miss Friday, and then we could play Mr. 2. So the reason we play these cards is just because they're 2Ks, so they would just replace the 2Ks that we currently play. Then we have Miss All Sunday, which allows us to curve into 8. So if we go first, we can play Miss All Sunday on 5, and then next turn we're at 8 Dawn, so we can immediately play a Crocodile. The only reason I didn't like Miss All Sunday is because if you win the die roll, she's not necessary, and any turn after you hit 10 Dawn, she doesn't do anything. Also, you aren't in a rush to hit 10 Dawn because you don't play that many boss monsters. So you're okay just going your normal curve. In addition, you don't have any minus Dawn cards besides Crocodile, so there just isn't any point in playing Miss All Sunday in our current build. Then if we play the Baroque Works package, we can play Mr. 4 because he is a blocker for Baroque Works. So when we go -1, he becomes a 5/7 blocker, which is very, very strong. And then one of the main reasons to play it is just because of the Baroque Works card. Miss Valentine being able to search Baroque Works allows us to have a free event that will help replenish our hands. So we can play Baroque Works and then draw, and then, we can play Baroque Works, add a Baroque Works card, draw, and we just got a free card. In addition, late game, if you have Baroque Works, you can put 1 Dawn on your leader, play Baroque Works, and then if you hit Crocodile, you can add Crocodile, play Crocodile, and heal a card. Heal a life. So it ends up just being the perfect curve. You use all your Dawn when typically what you would do is just swing 7 and play the 8 drop. But if you're able to draw in addition to that, that would be great. And then also just being able to see Crocodile faster and more consistently. Those are the main reasons that we would play the Baroque Works engine. The reason that I'm not playing the engine is because none of these cards felt impactful enough to play. All the 2Ks were only 2Ks. I would never play them onto the board. Miss All Sunday isn't good after turn 5. and she's not good if you're on an even curve. She's just not necessary. And then Mr. Four it's a nice blocker, but it's just, I'd rather be playing impactful cards onto the board in the as far as playing 8 drop or a 10 drop or removing my opponent's cards. I don't want to play a blocker that can be bottom decked or KO'd. Next, we have the Animal Kingdom package. So the main reason I didn't play the Animal Kingdom package is because going minus Dawn is very, very tough to our strategy. Every time we go -1 or -2, it puts us on a weird curve where it just feels like we're behind on our opponent. We want to be reactive onto the board. So if I'm on 7 and I go -2 and next turn I'm on 7, then there are a lot of dead cards in my hand. You know, if I have the 10 drops or the 8 drops, it just takes longer to play them. And then -1 Dawn, you are able to play if you are on a odd curve, but if you're put on an even curve, if you win the die roll and you decide to go second, which is what you want to do, you don't want to play those cards because now you're on an odd curve. So it just puts you in a tough situation where your deck just performs worse. Also, none of these cards felt impactful enough to play in this deck, just because it would put the deck in an awkward situation. I felt that if I was going to play an Animal Kingdoms package, then I probably should just play Kaido, because the cards would just perform better there. Because when it comes to having the stage that gives you your Dawn back, we don't have, Crocodile doesn't have anything like that, so I didn't think it was worth playing. And then finally, we have the Sentomaro package. This is another option that I consider for the deck, just because it does give you some early presence onto the board. But I felt that it went against what the deck was trying to do for a couple of reasons. Number one, you had to play these pacifistas that if you drew them, they would just be dead cards in your hand. Typically, that isn't a problem for other decks because it is a 1K, but with our deck, you want every play to be strong. You want to either be removing something or you want to establish a threat that is very hard to remove, hence our 8 drops and 10 drops. However, playing a 4/6 onto the board where I'd rather just play a 3000 Worlds and draw a card is the reason I don't play it. Also, Sentomaro is a strong option on 3 because it does allow us to just have presence very early, and then on 6 we can still have that presence. However, the Sentomaro package is very costly. It costs us 3 Dawn every single turn, so we just can't play the events as soon as we want to. So for example, if I'm going to play something around the lines of 3000 Worlds, that would cost me 8 Dawn. I would need 4 for the event, 1 of my leaders to be able to draw off the event, and then 3 for Sentomaro. And then when it comes to Red Rock, I would need 10 Dawn, 6 for the event, 3 for Sentomaro, 1 for my leader. So it's just too expensive to play Sentomaro. It's too expensive mid-game because then I can't play my events and get value from them. And then late game, there are just better cards that I'd rather be playing. I'd rather be playing a 10 drop or healing and establishing an 8/9. And with that, that's the deck profile. I really do think that this deck can compete in the meta. The meta can sometimes be a little slower when it comes to Blue Crocodile and Whitebeard, and this deck has good matchups against those 2 decks. When it comes to rush decks like Zoro, this deck can also compete because Zoro can run out of cards. So as long as you're able to keep a healthy life total, which is very easy for this deck to do, you can start outvaluing them because they'll run out of cards and then you'll play a 10 drop to bounce their cards, and then you'll still have enough cards in hand to guard. So it just works well against that deck. When it comes to Law is a hard matchup just because they do play so many blockers and they have so much value. So your deck can't quite do what it wants to do. But if they don't see enough blockers, or you see enough cards to remove their blockers in the form of Dragon Twister to bottom deck a 1 drop, or 3000 Worlds to bottom deck their Law, we can start attacking their leader, especially since the first 2 attacks are free. Law is typically just a 2 life leader because they need the first 2 cards for life. They need the first 2 cards to be able to play and shambles. And next is Katakuri. Katakuri can be a hard matchup that they see multiple big moms because you do keep your life total high, so they can just get free value and remove your cards. But if they only see one Big Mom or you just see enough removal, then that matchup can also be winnable. I really do encourage anybody who watched the video to try to find a deck that they want to work and see if there are any new cards that allow them to play the deck. I really do like the idea of playing Rogue and just being creative in that sense. And I will be continuing to show off Rogue decks on the channel. And with that, if you've made it this far into the video, please consider commenting, and subscribing. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye.